Hello and welcome back, everyone. Happy Thursday. Today we are going to be doing a rundown of Dev Diary 129, which is going to be covering the Discrimination rework. We're going to make racism great again, except it was never great in Victoria 3 or in real life. But it was never great in Victoria 3 because discrimination's always been completely binary. You're either discriminated against or you're not. And, you know, racism is a little bit more deep than black and white. And so we're going to be getting a more nuanced version of discrimination that is going to be based off of total acceptance value, which is going to be more interesting, more nuanced, and is going to finally make assimilation useful. Assimilation is kind of useless. We'll talk about it more later. But this is what we are going to be covering today. We get our Happy Thursday, of course. Big nice on that front, and on the Discord. And this is something that is a subject which I'm uncertain how to feel. On the Discord, when linking to this Dev Diary, we got Happy 4th Day of the Week Victorians. Last week, we did get a Happy Thursday of the Discord link, and this leaves me in a little bit of a quandary because I'm not certain how I feel about this. Because, okay, we are getting effectively wished a Happy Thursday, so it's a kind of double Happy Thursday, but is this just an attempt to not wish us a Happy Thursday? I don't really know what's going on, or is it a playful Happy Thursday? Comment below if you have opinions on whether or not this constitutes a Happy Thursday on those grounds, but secondarily, there's another thing. The first day of the week is Sunday. So this is not the 4th day of the week, this is the 5th day of the week, or if you're watching this in the future, it's whatever the day of the week it is. And so this means that, well, of course you're watching it in the future because you're not watching it in real time because I'm not streaming because it's a video because it's being recorded, but it's the 5th day of the week. Thursday's the 5th day of the week. Except the person who wrote that on Discord is at work. And Thursday is the 4th day of the work week. There's a lot to think about, a lot to unpack in this. Whether or not a happy 4th day of the week constitutes a happy Thursday, I'm not sure. But, you know, without further ado, regarding Thursdays, because those are much ado about nothing, except for this is actually what people tune in for, the happy Thursday, and then they click away, we're going to talk about our racism / discrimination. It's me, Lino, and in today's Dev Diary, I'm going to walk you through the upcoming changes to one of the game's central society features, namely the discrimination system. Until now, discrimination has always been binary in Victoria 3. So, like, okay, let's continue. Pops either discriminated against or they were not. This has led to a fairly one-dimensional feature where there's not a lot of variety in the what pops are experiencing. It also has made it hard for us to add harsh consequences to be discriminated against pops since it would have affected so many pops around the world. And so, you know, just as an example, like, in the United States historically, there was, like, a lot of discrimination. And that's, like, an understatement. But the discrimination, like, the Italians faced in the 1900s, or, like, the late 1800s or whatever, is a lot different than the discrimination that African Americans faced, you know, in the same time period, unless you ask an Italian. So what we are talking, just to be clear, Italians they had some problems, and same with the Irish and this type of stuff. And by problems, I mean they had problems with the way people treated them, not they were a problem, which is a cause of how people treated them. Shout out to Typhoid Mary. So we are taking some steps to make, she was, by the way, wrongfully imprisoned without charge, and a big reason for that was because she was Irish, but that's like a completely different tangent. So we're taking some steps to make that more interesting. First of all, we're saying goodbye to talking about discrimination. Instead, we're going to talk about its opposite, acceptance. We're going to talk about acceptance. That's a great way of framing it. Okay, each pop will have an acceptance score of between 0 and 100. This value is determined by the pop's country laws, in particular citizenship and the church and state group, which play the biggest role here. There are also other laws that will have an impact, but we're going to go over those in an upcoming later Dev Diary. This is really kind of an interesting teaser. Based on some of the kind of stuff we are seeing in this Dev Diary, we are assuming that some of these laws are going to be your assimilation law, who you allow to assimilate into your country, this type of thing, because assimilation is going to be a lot more nuanced now, and there's going to be several laws, I think, which are going to apply to this, which maybe affect acceptance a little bit, but we do see a little bit of a kind of screenshot here, which is going to be talking about national supremacy, where we are going to have varying levels of acceptance. So to use kind of the Italian vis-a-vis the African American example and think through this one, we are going to have acceptance from primary culture. So for in the USA, Dixie Pops and Yankee Pops will have 100 acceptance. And then we have acceptance from heritage and cultural traits. Now, to be honest, I do not remember all that well who shares both heritage and cultural traits, because in the game, as it stands right now, you only need one, and then you're fine, and then you're set, and then you're good to go. So I actually don't know like all the European cultural traits all that well, because if you share European heritage, you're automatically not accepted. But I believe the way it would work is, if I'm not mistaken, Italian does not share a cultural trait with either Yankee or Dixie, and so what we would have is 50 acceptance under Italian if we were in the United States under national supremacy, and then if we were African American, since we share a cultural trait because they are American, in terms of the cultural, but they do not have the European heritage trait, as you have with the Yankee and Dixie Pops, so their acceptance would be 25. And so this would give a varying level of, the way it's going to work is there's going to be levels of acceptance, and so we'll continue on because we're about to talk about that. As you can see, the old rules of cultural similarity will still apply in the new system. Now though, instead of being immediately accepted, if the culture shares a heritage trait, they will gain a high acceptance value bonus, for example. This allows for a broader range of acceptance from the cultures that are facing violent hostility to the primary cultures will always have the highest acceptance value. The religious impact is changed to provide a loud car outside if a religion shares a trait with a state religion. This provides us one step closer to the full picture, but we're not quite there yet. The acceptance value actually determines which acceptance status a pop has. So this is the new system. Instead of this binary discriminated versus accepted, we're going to have acceptance status. And the way it's going to work is there's going to be 5 possible statuses ranging from full acceptance to violent hostility. So it's going to be in terms of levels. One thing, like infamy also operates in terms of levels. If you're 24.99, then you will be, and no one has a problem with you, but if you're 25.01, people have a problem with you. And I kind of don't like this like light switch type threshold, but with the values that you get in terms of discrimination from a variety of laws, it might make sense to have it be kind of a light switch type threshold. I would prefer something that scales like linearly, and you could have it scale linearly from level to level where it's applying bonuses or malices depending on where exactly you are. Like if you're at 24.99, it should not be a substantive difference between that and 25.01. But we're going to have step levels in terms of acceptance status, which is, once again, way more nuanced because we, instead of having 2 statuses, we now have 5. Okay. Which we'll use to apply consequences to the pops in questions. We, of course, do have the work in progress qualifier. Everyone remember, this is not necessarily how things are going to be, but this is definitely going to change. We're going to make solutions to make it more readable. Yeah, this is not very readable, but we can tease out some interesting things here. So we see that we have a bunch of check marks for allows assimilation in cultural erasure, open prejudice, second-rate citizen, and second-rate citizen. The 5th level is just full primary culture, I assume. And so we have violent hostility will not be able to be assimilated here, but everyone else will be. I think that where this check mark is coming from, it has to do with the laws regarding assimilation. We have assimilation for pops in varying rankings, where it's going to apply different levels of assimilation. And then we see modifiers for radicalism depending on where you are, violent hostility being the one that experiences the most radicalism, and we see that car is certainly radical, and by C I mean here. We see loyalism for full acceptance, and so we're going to see this stratified thing where having more acceptance is going to allow you to it's going to help you a little bit in regards to loyalism versus radicalism. And I think that this is a new modifier. And it used to be just more radicalism from discrimination, just categorically, and you didn't have this loyalism bonus. I'm not 100% sure, but this is going to help combat higher degrees of radicalism, which are going to be harder to avoid when they nerf abdication meta. So we see political pop strength is going to scale in a way that is more nuanced than basically 0 political strength versus a ton of political strength, where you're going to be getting 115% versus 60% when you have the most accepted versus least accepted. So basically double, but I think that this is overall a huge buff to political strength in the direction of people who are discriminated against, which works with their cultural movement system, although a lot of these people that are discriminated against probably are going to have worse jobs as well when we kind of scroll through some of these things. And if they have worse jobs, then they're going to be less politically active, generally speaking, and their literacy is going to be lower, these types of things. And so they not only will they have less political strength because of this modifier, there's going to be other things that make them a lot less politically active as well. We see voting contribution, minus 4 pops in the cultural erasure acceptance status. I don't know if this... I assume that violent hostility either can't vote or has a similar malice. Gives vote... Oh, okay, there we go. They just straight up don't have voting rights. We see gives voting rights to all 4 of these categories, and so we're likely to see voting rights be a law as well. Still not sure yet. We see qualifications is going to be very significant differences between where they are, which is going to affect what types of jobs they can get, which is going to further affect the amount of money they get, which is going to affect, their level of both. I can't remember if it's both wealth and literacy, or wealth or literacy, but wealth informs literacy. That really is a huge driver from political activity, or if it matters from job to job. And then we see allows work in government buildings of various types and military buildings. I'm assuming these are going to be laws as well, or a single law. And this is also very significant because last Step Diary, we heard that the military was going to be, there was going to be a 2-part system, and they were going to be roughly equivalent, and military was going to be a huge informer of, power and political movements. This means that allowing people to work in the military is a significant choice, because if you are trying to force multiculturalism, allowing people who are hyper-discriminated to work in military buildings, and then building a bunch of military buildings like overseas in places where there's a lot of discrimination might be a really good way to spark substantive political movements. Or maybe those revolutions were going to be mostly informed by military and not political movements. I think it might have been revolutions, but either way, this is going to be something to consider when it comes to passing this type of law, whether or not you want to try and do it, or in order to spike a certain type of rev that wants to force multiculturalism so you could swap sides, or not. So this is going to be an interesting little thing. You can see we are not only reworking the system to fit the new vision, but also expanding it with new effects besides acceptance itself. From simple statistical changes like the tax burden per accepted rules for who can work in the government buildings or serve in your military. I think there should be a comma here. We have added a decent amount of things to the new laws. Now, I didn't see tax burden in here, but, minus wages. Interesting. We do like decreasing wages, don't we? Well, we kind of do. Mixed bag, but that's actually going to be something that determining whether or not you actually want to decrease wages and increase discrimination is now a choice that we might have to consider through. So if you decrease, generally speaking, you kind of, there's like 2 things going on. You get more free money modifiers. The balance gets split between pops, or it gets split between wages and getting paid out to dividends. There are more free money modifiers on dividends, so this is a reason to prefer dividends. But money that is going to the pops directly vis-a-vis, or like wages going to the non-ownership pops, wages will increase SOL more. So it's a matter of, do you prefer the free money modifier or the SOL in terms of whether or not just this in isolation is going to be something you want. But giving more political power to people who are discriminated against might be something you do or don't want to do, so this is also going to be an effective thing, because as we've mentioned like 3 times already, how much pops are getting paid is going to change their political activity. Another factor that determines a pop's acceptance value is the pop's cultural community in the state. So this is cool. This is local, much like local prices. An immigrant pop that is fresh off the boat, I'm not sure we like that term, will not be accepted as that of another culture which has been there for 30 years already. No matter what your laws say, your pops will need some time to get used to new faces, their neighborhood, but eventually the new arrivals will reach the acceptance value which the laws have determined for them. And so you see here, we have this modifier that is going to decay to 0 in 7 years. So over the course of, it looks like a total of 10 years. We're going to go from this minus 25 penalty. Did we just read that it was going to be 10 years? No, well, we see this 30 years, but this looks like it's decaying over the course of 10 years, unless this was at like 100 before, and it's been decaying over the course of 30 years. Anyways, or like minus 50. In either case, oh yeah, it was minus 50, and then it's going to be 30 years. Okay, so when a new cultural community comes, we're going to have an acceptance modifier that is going to be very substantive, like minus 50, which is going to make it, even if they are accepted, they're still going to be discriminated, or sorry, even if they're primary culture, they're still going to be discriminated against when they arrive, because nobody else is like them, and the people haven't gotten used to them yet, which is going to be an interesting and nuanced thing, and is also a very significant nerf to migration, right? Because even if you accept everyone, if they have just gotten to the like state, then you're still going to have a very significant problem, you know, in terms of their level of acceptance and the radicalism they cause. And so importing a bunch of pops from China, as is kind of meta, when that first cultural community spawns, they are going to have really low acceptance in the state, which makes sense. And this should cause a problem early on, but then over the course of 30 years is the kind of timeline, which is a third of the game. So that's a very substantive portion of time. They will gradually get rid of this malice, and this level of malice makes it so the fact that this is decaying over the course of times in a linear way is going to make it so that the step modifier is not as preferable as one that's like linear, but okay. The step modifier of acceptance, because it's going to be at step levels rather than tracking something proportionally to the acceptance. It's going to be you cross a threshold. Of course, you can still improve your pop situation by enacting more progressive laws. These provide higher acceptance bonus to cultures. So it looks like we can have an equilibrium then of over 100. So we have national supremacy, and that's giving us 100. And then we have another law that gives us plus 10 on top. Maybe we can overcome some of the malices like this minus 50. But okay. For example, ethnostate doesn't grant any bonuses to any cultures that share a non-heritage cultural trait with your primary culture, but national supremacy grants plus 25 acceptance if they do. Maybe we can't get over 100. Okay. All right. So you're playing the game. I mean, you passed multiculturalism, but you didn't think your pops would immediately hug and welcome the people they were despising yesterday, did you? No, we did not, which has always been a strangeness in game, and now we have an improvement. Law enactments that increase a pop's acceptance value will suffer from a penalty much in the same way as newly established cultural communities, which will decay over time. This makes a lot of sense. I think this is a reasonable way to handle it, and so this shows that the establishment of the new laws quite well and delays the full effectiveness of the more progressive laws, which of course is why you have, like, in the history of the United States, once the slaves were freed, they were kind of not really absolutely free. You had the Jim Crow laws, you had to guess how many jelly beans are in the jar, or you don't get to vote type of things. And so even though they had the the de jure ability to vote in terms of their acceptance value, like if we think of it like in terms of this, maybe they were in cultural erasure. The fact that they had just passed the non-discrimination laws meant that they were still in like open prejudice or violent hostility or whatever it was, and so like you couldn't vote in practice. Okay, which will decay over time. This shows that it will take some time. It just takes some time. Another thing we are changing is the conversion in assimilation, thank God, so that your pops can escape from the undesirable lower classes of acceptance. We still think it's weird that you are assimilating in a way that changes your heritage trait, but okay. When 1.8 comes out later this year, pops will be able to assimilate and convert to any culture. Oh, wait. Does that mean you can only change your cultural trait? Hot damn, that's so good. I was thinking that it was going to let you change your heritage trait, which of course doesn't make any sense. Any culture or religion that would provide them with a higher acceptance value, even if that's not their primary culture or state religion. Or is culture just like saying, so can the Han Pops assimilate to Dixie. What would be like kind of preferable in terms of assimilation is if you can't change your heritage trait, but you can change your cultural trait. So if you could become, you would become Han American or something like this, there's a minimum assimilation value that is needed to be crossed in order for it to be eligible. This makes sense. If you're in just like violent oppression, you can't cross this line. And I think one of the reasons why we had binary kind of levels of discrimination before had a lot to do with the fact that you didn't want slaves to be set free in terms of game mechanics based on or you didn't want them to be able to be assimilated and then automatically set free. I mean, you probably did because reasons, but in terms of the game mechanics, you didn't want to allow this assimilation of non-accepted pops to apply to people who were experiencing slavery. And so this seems like a nuanced sort of fix for it. For example, if their acceptance score is at 25 and a minimum assimilation value from the citizenship law is defined at 50, their target cultural acceptance would need to be 75 or higher in order for them to assimilate. This still looks at cultures that are present in the same state. So if none of them have a value of 75 or higher, the assimilation could not happen. This assimilation process might also still be forbidden by laws. E.g., under this law, it is currently not allowed for members of the lowest status to assimilate at all. So we do see one of the examples of a law that we will be seeing in an upcoming dev diary. Similarly, pops of the highest status also do not assimilate with the current setup, as they already possess enough rights and privileges to enjoy a good life. So if you're already over, I'm not sure what the values will be, but if you're already over 100, because you share a heritage and cultural trait and there's another modifier giving you plus acceptance, you're also not going to assimilate. This has some downstream effects. I'm not sure. I think we actually didn't mention the secondary thing that assimilation is useful for now, which is that the petite bourgeoisie, their clout only comes from pops that are primary culture. And so if you want to stop people who are accepted enough from assimilating, in order to decrease the petite bourgeoisie's clout, this is maybe something you could try and intentionally do. We're going to have to take a look at the laws and see what it looks like. All of these changes require a fairly substantial rework of our interface. A lot is currently in development and is coming in pieces, just like that ambulance is coming for someone else. Shout out, hope you make it. So you will have to discover it on your own. But I still wanted to provide you with a faint idea of what's coming. The Cultures panel has been renamed to Society, which fits better with status and religion. The acceptance and statuses are listed in a new tab, providing an overview of what percentage pops falls under which status and who exactly that is. And so we are going to see the nice little Society tab. This is a cool little interface looking where these are most accepted, these are kind of not accepted, these are subservient accepted, and these are we're stomping on you accepted, and we don't even get the graphic that is going to be for level 1, but we assume that it's pretty bad. We're taking a look at currently at cultural erasure, and it's going to say all of these things that are getting applied here. Qualifications, acceptance, yeah, so this is definitely a work in progress, but this is giving us an idea of how many people are accepted here. In the end, it didn't even matter. We hope that this feature rework will enhance your experience in regards to managing it'll enhance your racism experience with regards to managing your pops, so that it will show much more variety in pops' lives. I think 5 levels of stratification is much better than 2, especially on the lower end of the spectrum. You should see a lot more consequences, as sad as that is. It is sad, big sad. But I mean, it makes sense, and it is part of the simulation, and it is also a reason, currently migration is just super, super, super powerful. And one of the reasons it should not be powerful is it should cause, internal problems in regards to how your people feel about that, unless they are just hyper accepting of other people. But even if there are, there should still be some levels of culture shock. So I'm really excited about the new cultural communities applying an acceptance malice. I think this makes a lot of sense. I don't know we have to see what some of the penalties look like for example, the radicalism penalty. If getting a bunch of migrants ends up creating a situation where you are raising the radicalism to the extent that you are getting turmoil and that turmoil is preventing construction, it might be the case that trying to grow your pops through pop growth rather than migration focus becomes significantly better than it was. I still think that it's not going to be the case and it's going to be still migration meta, but this is something that we might be on offer, or at least you're going to be punished a little bit more. This rework is an important step for us since we can make better use of the system in future narrative content too, which is also super cool. We have some ideas for future mechanical changes that that require this rework as a foundation, but expecting, if there's ever a USA patch, I'm expecting to see that there will be interesting things, in regards to the levels of discrimination and this type of stuff, because USA is kind of a bit of an outlier in terms of its like history, being a nation of immigrants and also moving from slavery to acceptance of African Americans and this type of stuff. And so in terms of narrative content, there's probably a lot of interesting things here. That's all for today. He misspelled Happy Thursday, but we got a Happy Thursday at the beginning, so that's okay. Next week, on October 3rd, I'm handing it back to Martin again, who will provide some of the more important information with what we're doing Civil Wars. This should be an interesting one. Be sure to check it out. Civil Wars got reworked in patch 1.3. Very excited to see it reworked again, because currently, like, the way that it pulls states into the Civil Wars, like, kind of doesn't make that much sense. Man, I remember patch 1.3 was just like a nightmare to, like, revving was so scary. And patch 1.2 it wasn't, because the AI is not like this anymore, but the AI really loved siding against you in revolutions, and it was so painful. And then sometimes you would actually get situations, or I had this once, where Run just got completely killed because AI sided on both sides of revolutions, on one side and the other, and I swapped sides to like the France side versus like the Ottoman side, because France supported one side, Ottoman supported the other, and then I didn't realize this at the time, but putting war goals in on someone makes them apply a lot more pressure in the war in terms of the AI, generally speaking, and the Ottomans applied way more pressure, and the Run just got killed because I lost the revolution because there were people on both sides. But yeah, the AI was super aggressive in 1.3, siding with revolutions, and now they don't do it very often, like almost never, which is maybe not realistic, but in terms of frustrating, losing to a revolution just kills the Run. You just get annexed, and so that's maybe something that should get changed. We'll see if that's actually on the docket. I doubt it, because it never gets discussed, but like it's so catastrophic, and I think that the solution of just making it so GPs don't really like siding against you when you're experiencing a revolution is maybe a fine solution. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please feel free to like, comment, subscribe. Still really not sure about the 4th day of the week thing. Not sure how I feel about that. Like, actually just unsure. But other than that, happy Thursday, everyone.